Hello, my name is Talia Coleman, and I decided to do my final presentation on John Q, which is a film that was produced and directed back in 2002, and it's starring Denzel Washington, based on the notion that his son had a enlarged heart and was in need of a heart transplant, which led to the conflict because his insurance would not cover it. Pardon me, I have a little bit of a cough, but I'll try to maintain that during the presentation. So the characteristics of the individuals involved: John Q is a father, husband, hardworking family man, just wanting to provide for his family, just a basic kind of guy, very loving and caring. Lieutenant Frank, he ended up being the hostage negotiator and was able to use his skills to navigate the conflicting situation. Chief of Police Gus, he was not interested in negotiating at all with John. He was more concerned with eliminating the threat to the hospital, which means taking out John by any means, even if that meant to kill him. Dr. Raymond Turner was the heart doctor who informed John, along with Rebecca Payne, the hospital administrator, that John's son needed a heart transplant. His heart was enlarged, and that it would cost a great deal of money to even get him on the donor list. And so the prognosis was that at that point they didn't know how long it would be before he would receive a heart. So the conflict progressed from when his son was at his baseball game playing, running around the bases. He ended up collapsing. They took him to the ER. The ER determined that he had an enlarged heart, and that it will cost $250,000 for him to put his son on the transplant list. The issue was that John's health insurance, his HMO, would not cover the full amount of that, and they only covered a portion of it. And so John and his family would have to raise $75,000 out of their pocket, which they did not have because they were just low-income, middle-class citizens, and they didn't have a lot of extra funds. And so that's where the issue started, that his son could not get on the list. After attempts to fundraise, they sold their items, properties, jewelry, raised money at the churches, did extra things to kind of raise money over time. The hospital grew impatient and threatened to send their son home from the hospital. That's at the point where the wife stepped in and said, do something. And so John took that initiative and knew that he had to do something drastic to get what he wanted. Excuse me. So he refused to accept the notion that the hospital would just deny his son. And he came to the ER with chains and with a handgun, locked the doors, and he took hostages inside and demanded that he have his son's name placed on the donors list. Now, the communication strategies and the personality traits are explained for each character. So John, I would characterize him as a person who had a lot of internal control. He was able to keep himself composed, kind of handle the situation at the beginning, at the onset of it. He was emotionally intelligent up until the point where conflict began, when he overthrew the hospital. Dr. Raymond and Rebecca, their personality trait would be the Machiavellianism. There we go. Lieutenant Frank takes in information. His personality trait, he was really intuitive, and he processed information and perceived things pretty well. So his job was really to kind of listen to what John was requesting and kind of play off of his motion, because he didn't want to trigger John to do anything drastic, as in to take out or kill any of the hostages or even himself. Chief Gus, a trait for him, the way he received information was through sensing information. So he was able he wanted concrete information, facts, tangible things, specific information. He didn't want any of the other kind of details to try to guess and figure out. Communication strategies. John preferred to communicate face to face. Toward the end of it, his preferred method was either via phone or a walkie-talkie, some way where he could still communicate to express his demands that he wanted and to make those demands clear. Dr. Raymond, he was pretty timid about his approach to communicating with John at the onset of letting him know that his son would not be on the list due to not enough money. So he kind of used the filtering strategy, as in kind of playing off of the energy or the thoughts of the person that he was in communication with, which is John Q. So he kind of took that and processed things as he went to kind of filter out the best way to handle and approach the patient's father. Lieutenant Frank used effective listening communication skills by talking less and listening more, and this was at the point of the negotiation. Each time he got on the phone with John Q, he would have to approach the situation in a very specific way, listening carefully to what John was requesting so he could comply to a certain degree to kind of keep John calm without escalating him. John tried to manage the conflict the best he could. He tried to keep the faith, keep the hope that his son would be able to get on the list, that the hospital would change their mind and find a way to get him on there. But when that didn't happen and he was unable to confront his conflict, it led him to do drastic things, which is overtaking the ER at the hospital. Negotiation style. John used a cooperative negotiation style to work with Frank. That meaning that John and Lieutenant Frank, the negotiator, both were going to get what they want. It was going to be a win-win situation. Lieutenant Frank wanted hostages released in exchange for John Q being able to make phone calls to his wife or to receive food inside the hospital because they were hungry. So that's kind of how that process worked. As the movie progressed, John walked through each stage of the negotiation process. Excuse me. John showed great leadership when, even inside the hospital, when he was holding others hostage, he was able to give direction and kind of sway the individuals who were thinking that he was out of his mind for doing what he was doing. And they began to support why he was doing what he was doing. Even the people on the outside, the cameras and the citizens who were viewing it on TV began to support. And so that kind of showed his leadership because other people were able to change their behavior and kind of get behind his cause. Dr. Raymond gained the trust of John and other hostages, and they all became cooperative with John's demands, which kind of avoided prevented anyone from losing their life or being seriously injured. When it comes to ethics, the hospital did not demonstrate good ethics in the way they handled the patient. I know they have things and rules they have to follow. Excuse me, but their approach to it did not seem ethical. It felt it was more about the money, which a lot of times it is, but the way about it was not the best way or the Christian-centered way to do it. John, on the other hand, I would say he didn't show good ethics when he overthrew the hospital. That wasn't appropriate for him to do that. But his principles and the values of why he was doing it, that was the ethical part of it. He cared about his son. His son's life meant more to him than his own. And John was even willing to take his own life just to give his heart to his son. So that really kind of laid out the whole scenario of how that went. To wrap this all up, one defining moment of the film, which kind of sums everything up, is when John Q made this statement that I will not bury my son will bury me. And he was willing to take his own life, even in the midst of everything, the whole conflict situation, negotiation. He was willing to lay down, take his own life, so his son could have a heart and live. So that to me is beautiful. That is my presentation and my references. Thank you very much.